Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, which is an e-launch of the SDG Youth Advocacy Campaign. This campaign aims to raise awareness of the 17 SDGs through engagement with youth students and bringing their intellectual abilities and their creativity to bear on the development issues of the Caribbean region, and also to show the work they're doing related to the SDGs in action. It will incorporate the visual arts and technology, the analysis and advocacy of the Sustainable Development Goals. The project will also seek to highlight the current youth-led projects that reflect the SDG agenda in action. The SDGs are the current development framework that has been adopted globally, and it's very important as part of achieving the SDG goals and leaving no one behind, that we incorporate not only private sector, the government, the civil society, but we must also take into consideration the youth. It is important as the leaders of the future that they engage in these principles now and not only when they come into positions of power. So today's webinar, which is the e-launch, it marks the beginning of the SDG Youth Advocacy Campaign, which we're very much looking forward to because we expect great things from our young people. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, for spearheading this campaign, UNDP Jamaica for funding the campaign, UNDP Trinidad and Tobago, and the RC's office in Trinidad and Tobago for assisting with communication and technological assistance. Today's agenda is going to look a little like this. We're going to have a brief overview of the project with some insights into the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals for the region and the role of the youth in the development dialogue of the region. And this will be followed by a panel discussion. And today we have 3 panelists. However, we're experiencing some technical difficulties with one of our panelists from Guyana. So we're hoping that we will be able to link with her. I will introduce the panelists to you shortly. After the panel discussion, we will open the floor to questions and answers, questions from the persons who are joining us via the internet, after which time we will close. So with no further ado, I would like to pass you to Ms. Stacy Richards-Kennedy, and she will introduce herself and then give us the first part of the webinar.
Thank you, Ishani. Let me say a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us via the internet. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a very exciting moment for all of us who are involved in this campaign. I'm the Director of Development at the University of the West Indies, and this project has been conceptualized and is being rolled out by the university, the regional university, across our 4 campuses, working very closely in collaboration with a number of development partners, as you indicated. So this is a critical project for us, not just the university, but also for all of our partners working on advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, because we see youth engagement and youth participation as central to the success of the SDG agenda in the Caribbean. It's a project that will provide multiple platforms for young people to become engaged, because it presents numerous outlets for advocacy on the SDGs, either through the short film that will be produced, through the photo competition that will be rolled out as well over the coming months, via social media, via the work of UETV that is both on cable and online, and also via this webinar, because we're bringing together a number of participants from many countries in the region. So the whole idea of the campaign is to complement the efforts of our partners and NGOs working to support the involvement of youth in shaping national and regional development, some of whom are joining us today to share their own experiences. And the University of the West Indies is committed to doing its part in preparing young people to be global citizens, to translate these global goals to their local and regional context. And we're also very keen to ensure that we're grooming young scholars who have both intellect and compassion, so that they will not just use or see social media as gadgets for entertainment, but also as tools for becoming more organized and activating their networks to strengthen coordination, implementation, and advocacy on development issues. So as an activist university, we are pleased to play our part in supporting today's webinar as we officially launch the Youth SDG campaign across the region. It is a feature event that is linked to a regional conference that we are also organizing at the end of June in collaboration with UNDP, the UN system, the government of Jamaica. The conference is being organized by Salises Mona, and this will take place on the 28th and to the 30th of June in Kingston. So we'd like to thank, at this stage, I'd just like to say thanks to all our partners, the UNDP, UN system, represented by the Resident Coordinator's Office here in Trinidad and Tobago, our own UE Youth Development Program, the SDSN Caribbean Youth Arm, which is Liana, who's representing this organization, and she's based in Guyana, as well as the SDSN Caribbean Youth Arm. So we're really pleased to have everyone on board, and also to have those who are participating with us virtually.
Michael Joseph, and he's representing the University of the West Indies Youth Development Program. Michael is a project coordinator at the University of the West Indies Youth Development Program, a project of the Vice Chancellery. There he is responsible for the conceptualization of projects and their development. While a law student, he chaired the ad hoc working committee with the objective of building a platform for a sophisticated and strategic approach toward youth development for the university. The result of that committee's work was the formation, rather, of the University of the West Indies Youth Development Program. Currently, he manages a number of youth development initiatives, including a youth anti-violence campaign in St. Lucia, a Caribbean road safety campaign to be implemented in 4 territories served by the University of the West Indies, and is carrying out multi-sectoral consultations to inform a work-integrated learning strategy for the university. One of his chief passions is the ever closer relationship between youth and global, regional, and national development agendas. Liana is a biologist and has earned her BSc in biology with honors from the University of Ghana in 2013. And she also has earned her MSc degree in natural resources and environmental management, where she specialized in coastal and marine resource management from the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus in 2016. She currently works as a lecturer with the Department of Biology, Faculty of Natural Sciences at the University of Guyana. Liana is highly interested in biodiversity, conservation, particularly fishery resources, and has worked with researchers from the University of Guyana. She's an active member of the Caribbean Youth Environment Network since June 2014, and has been working closely with that network, national chapter in Guyana and Barbados, to promote climate change, environmental and biological conservation. Melanie Joseph, who is representing Global Shapers Port of Spain Hub in Trinidad and Tobago. In 2009 humanities graduate of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, Melanie Joseph has a vested interest in sustainable development for Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean region. Her MA in Creative and Media Enterprises from the University of Warwick was a response to seeing certain key gaps in the cultural and creative industries related to research, business, and policy making during her 2-year tenure at the Trinidad and Tobago Entertainment Company. She has since worked at the Economic Development Board, Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, as well as the Culture Division, Ministry of Community Development, the Arts and Culture. She counts her musical work with Freetown Collective as a part of her community and national development work, as the band's music and message takes them frequently to schools and even prison programs. Being part of Global Shapers Hub Port of Spain is just one more avenue to continue to actively contribute to societal development among a group of young, motivated world shapers. She continues to champion innovative partnerships where her work allows, since strategic sector collaborations are the way forward. I agree. She has somewhat adopted the words of Frank Chimero as they capture her vision for development perfectly, and that is, to be human is to tinker, to envision a better condition and decide to work toward it.
Macro agendas, which is what I term them, which is what they really are. These global macro agendas are very lofty, they're very high, and it's very difficult for the youth organization with a $3,000 budget and 20 members, 30 members to address an agenda that says end poverty in all its forms everywhere. That's a little difficult for them to approach. We're a part of the UWI, and that's a difficult goal for us to even approach. Where do we begin? And how do we find the synergies amongst each other who will be addressing that goal at the same time? And I think too often we've been relying on the coincidence of persons working towards the same goal at the same time. And I know that we do try to focus persons towards the same activity by creating these thematic years or thematic decades and so on. But even those can be quite macro. And so when we're speaking about involving young persons into these large development agendas and localizing them, then that's exactly what we need to do. We need to localize them. And so we can't, in my mind, and this is Michael Joseph's personal opinion, in my mind, we can't bring these development agendas to them in the language that they're framed in currently. I think that makes it a little difficult. Sure, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the large billion-dollar organizations could look at those, and even they might struggle if they're localized to the country. But in terms of, okay, let's pick one. Goal 1, end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Now, how will the organization address that? In my mind, we would need to nationalize such an agenda. So we would need necessarily to, and I do know that governments do have some responsibility in doing so, in nationalizing these agendas and bringing it into their local context. But I think placing too much emphasis on the responsibility of a government is part of the mistake that we may make in terms of all of that responsibility being placed on a government to do all of these things. Through whatever medium we may, commission or working group or so on, can have these youth organizations come together to distill and reduce these macro agendas to a local nationalized agenda. I mean, St. Lucia currently, for example, we want to speak about end poverty everywhere. Why don't we begin by reducing homelessness by half in Dennery? And let's have that be that agenda. Let that be goal 1 for St. Lucia. And when we use that sort of language, it becomes more familiar. It becomes more, there's a greater sense of ownership over it, because it's now referring to me and my country and where I have a role, something I can touch and be a part of. And I think nationalizing those agendas in that way and framing the language in such a way that allows young people to see the relationship between these agendas developed at a place they've never been by people they've never heard of, to see the relationship between these agendas and what they're trying to achieve. And in nationalizing them in that way also, what we may also be able to do is prioritize what they may be. Because again, we have the goals numbered 1 to 17, and they may be prioritized at the international level, but are they prioritized by country? Barbados might not have, as where I'm from, Barbados may not have such a high rate of homelessness and translating into poverty as we may in another country. We may focus more on health and wellness, where we might have a particularly alarming rate of diabetes and HIV and AIDS among young people, communicable and non-communicable diseases. among young people. And so we may want to firstly localize that particular goal and then prioritize that goal in the context of Barbados. And in doing so, we're able to naturally allow people to see the synergies they have between each other.
Definitely, if you want to talk sustainable solutions and you want to engage youth, I think that should be a very it should be a decentralized system. We youth as young people, we should not depend only on government and decision makers to engage us and to implement the SDGs, if you want to limit it to that. So definitely youth should be pioneers of the SDGs, of sustainable development and all of that, and take it on their own. And with that decentralized system, you have youth-led organizations developing programs, initiative, campaigns, whatever it might be, to have youth at the grassroots level engage and create these solutions that we want, or the life that we want, and link it to sustainable development.
Opening up the conversation, giving them a seat at the table, giving us a seat at the table. A lot of the times you will hear policy and you hear policy jargon that you don't understand, and it doesn't, picture isn't clear. How is this actually affecting me? You know, this is a government concern, or this is something that European countries care about, but I think you have to start to narrow it down, bring it down to the micro levels. And community work is where it actually helps, because as Michael was saying as well, if it's something that you can see, if it's something that you can literally be a part of, it starts to mean more. And I think education, so conversation paired with education, and community work. So if I start to have conversations in my own neighborhood about recycling and sustainability, along like, let's see, something like closed loop cycle production and consumption, something simple. You use your water bottles. Before we throw it out, what can we use it for? What does our community need that may need plastic? Yeah. And start that discussion and go into some of the primary schools. And these aren't things that need to happen on a large scale. Small scale things eventually trickle and make their way. One person will hear it and take it home. Yes. Yeah. So I think that's where it has to start.
The Caribbean I would want in 2030. Well, firstly, I would want us to determine that there is a particular Caribbean we want in 2030. I think deciding that there is an end goal in mind is important in determining how we're going to even get there. And I'm not 100% satisfied that is a positive answer, that we are sure that there is a particular Caribbean we want in mind. My perspective as to what sort of Caribbean I would want in mind, and I would refer heavily to the final goal of the SDGs, and that is partnerships. I think there needs to be a more dynamic partnership arrangement, not just between the United Nations and other organizations, or between the United Nations and governments, but to acknowledge more so the community level organizations and their work in the community. And as my colleague, I think her name is Maleni, on the panel said, that where it needs to begin is at that community level. Because I'll be honest with you, the SDGs will mean nothing without the community level organizations. All of the money in the world could not replace what 5, 6 people do who are part of some grassroots organization that meet on a picnic bench underneath a tree. What they decide to do every day or during the summer or during their most active months, the SDGs will count for nothing without that. And so we need to really acknowledge what that means. And I was a little, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not entirely sure that now through the multidimensional the multidimensional agenda, now we're looking at shifting funding now further away from civil society organizations and almost exclusively now to governments. And I've heard that has a lot to do with how the civil society organizations are a part of a high income economy, and therefore, may not require as much support and so on. And I wasn't entirely satisfied with that response. And so now, even as we do initiatives, even us through the UWI Youth Development Program, operating through the university as we do initiatives. Very often the funding for our initiatives pass through government. The one in St. Lucia now that we're doing, the funding has to pass through the ministry that we're working with, and that's all right. That's all right, it passing through in that way, but that requires that the organizations work with governments. And while we should encourage our arrangement with government, that supposes that governments are always amenable to working with the organizations. And so, you know, we're very fortunate in terms of being able to work with the Ministry of Youth here. Otherwise, however attractive the initiative would have been, we would not have been able to receive funding. Oh, sorry. We would not have been able to receive funding if we were not operating within the ambit of government. I'm not sure. Can I be heard still?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Great. Sorry, I couldn't hear anybody for a little while. I got concerned.
That was if you were listening.
So I appreciate the need for bureaucracy. Don't get me wrong. When we were developing the UWA development program, there were every hurdle was there, and I understood and continue to understand the need to meet these hurdles. I understand the need for financial security, and to have our whistleblower policies and so on. We need to cut down on corruption, suggesting that it's ever so rife. So I understand that. What I don't find comforting in the least is how we depart from the impact that a community level organization can have on the SDGs and any other development agenda, what they can mean for our Caribbean. And when we speak about the Caribbean we need a Caribbean that invests heavily in its civil society body. I see the European Union doing it in the way that they operate with their amicus curiae committee through the European Union, which is essentially a body of civil society organizations that whenever they're passing European Union-wide laws, the laws must necessarily, by the structure of the European Union, go towards this body for consideration. And they're the civil society organizations that focus on environment, youth, whatever other categories there may be. They have their input into what that law looks like. And then by the time it returns back to the European Parliament and the European Council, it looks drastically different because now it has their input. It has certain safeguards in it. And then I look to CARICOM and I see the heads of government conference sitting there by itself. And I wonder, where is the civil society presence? Can't it be more dynamic than it is? And I'm not saying there is nothing there. I do know that the what are they called? The Caribbean Policy Development Center, CPDCS. I do know that they've been working with the European Union to develop something similar to the amicus curiae body of the European Union, and they've been doing that with the funding of the European Union. So they're funded, they have the concept. What is the problem? And it's been a while now, and I'd like to see that move speedily ahead, where persons like my colleague panelists here are not simply sitting here talking with me and you guys, but sitting there at their own body, validly recognized by CARICOM, where their voices and inputs. We're talking about having a seat at the table. That's where the table is. That's where the table is. And it's happening in CARICOM, it's happening in our national government. That's where these voices need to be had. And I mean, we can scream into the wind all we like, but unless, I know Leanne said that we should not depend on our governments so heavily, that we need to take certain initiative. I think plenty initiative has been taken there. And I think young people in the Caribbean especially have been really grabbing the bull by the horns and doing all that they can.
The Caribbean I would want in 2030 would be a united one that has implemented most of the SDGs, if not all. And why I say the SDGs, because they're all inclusive. Each goal is very inclusive, as all of you would know. And I would also like to see more youth-led initiative throughout the Caribbean, throughout the region. I don't know if it's just my opinion based on knowledge and experience, but I think we're somewhat polarized in this region. So I would like to see government and decision makers implementing through policy, implementing the SDGs through policy, and we have more youth-led solutions coming up in 2030. Simply, that is what I would like to see by 2030 for the Caribbean.
a vision of a more unified Caribbean region. But I use that with caution because sometimes that unification idea gets some of the smaller islands fighting to kind of resource things that they don't need. But I think we need to see ourselves as a whole and how we would support each other, partnerships again. And I want to see us driven by critical thinking and strategic partnerships. To get a lot done that way.
At this time, we have, I think there's one question from the internet that I want to pose. I think we touched on some of it already, but it is coming from a viewer here in Trinidad and Tobago. But it's, given the ambitious nature of the SDGs, can you identify the most effective mechanisms in which the youth can be involved? And I know we spoke about it to some extent. So building on anything that you've said before, any other pointers as how the youth can get involved in terms of localizing the SDGs? We spoke about greater partnerships. We spoke about linkages between the existing policy structures and governance structures. Michael spoke about having a seat at the table and the tables that count. For example, CARICOM and the other initiatives at the government level. We spoke about involving the communities more effectively and looking at the work done at the community level in a more serious way and aligning it with policy decisions and also the localization process of the SDGs. So is there anything any panelists would want to add to how, perhaps how youth could get more engaged in localizing SDGs?
I think it's not just talking about it from community-based education and awareness. I think you have to think of things like the national curriculum and stuff like that, that we can kind of tune and change a little bit to start to get that mindset change. Because sustainability and SDGs are a mindset mountain in a way. That's the first part of it. Like we say, all the policy and all the discussion is going to go over people's heads. I think it needs to get into the school system via curriculum, via non-traditional methods of delivery as well. I'm not just saying that because I'm a performer, but you know, arts and education goes a long way. So that is the starting point, because then you'll find a cycle of persons interested, aware, and it will work for itself.
Also to thank once again all of the people who partnered to make this e-launch webinar take place, the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, the UNDP Jamaica, UNDP Trinidad and Tobago, UN Resident Coordinator's Office, and all the wider partners, and especially the youth who logged in and asked some really interesting questions. Just to note that the stream will remain live, so you can continue to pose questions and the team will answer them. I want to hand over to Stacey now for just a few closing remarks.
Okay, so thank you, Shirley. Thanks to all of our speakers and participants. Two key messages that I would like to leave linked to our discussion on the SDGs, and those are: one, the need for integrated approaches to advance the SDG agenda, which really has to do with having a more balanced approach to people, planet, and prosperity, and how all of our countries, all of our communities, how we can get closer to achieving these goals. And secondly, the SDG also reinforces the importance of strong partnerships, and I think that's something that came up from the interventions of our different participants. And so this project, the campaign, the work that we're doing with our partners on the ground really is to help advance that process. And I will encourage all of the organizations, all of your youth organizations and your partners to really reinforce that message, because that's the way we want to make things different. We can't continue the status quo and expect to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We need to really adopt a radically different approach to how we do business and to how we approach development, so that it's not the short-term quick fixes that receive media attention, but rather a more sustained approach to long-term development planning and execution and accountability and advocacy on all fronts. So with those two messages, I'd like to thank everyone once again, and thank you, Shirley.